Welcome back to our next edition of the CBB Review Studio podcast. I am Dan Siegel, joined as always by my co-host, Ben Anderson. And today we are also joined by our fellow CBB Review writer, Jason Draven. Jason, first off, how's it going on your way?
All right, man. That AAC final is awesome. I wish that everybody would have been healthy, but that's just how it goes sometimes. So it was a pretty fun game and definitely a good watch. So I'm just ready to see how everything breaks down now that we're out of all the championships.
Yeah, and we got a bracket selected. We're previewing the West. Ben, how's it going for you?
Can't be better on a Selection Sunday, man. So excited to finally see the bracket and get down to our first region preview.
Yeah, like I said, we're doing the West. It is a national holiday, basically, at least in my household. We are recording here on Sunday night, so it is still that Selection Sunday. We still have the thrill that happened of the brackets being revealed just about, I guess, 2-3 hours ago at this point. And yeah, we're just going to go through every game. We'll start with the 1-16 matchup, Kansas against Howard. I guess really, is there anything to note here?
No, I mean, shout out Howard for that incredible comeback. They were down 4 with 13 seconds left or something to win over Norfolk State in their title game in the MEAC. But man, Kansas has looked great all season. They don't lose these type of games. I like them to advance pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, it was an impressive comeback for Howard for sure, and this is just an unfortunate draw for them for their first tournament. So yeah, I'm a little nervous for them. This is gonna be a rough slide.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. If I were to choose one redeeming quality, they shoot over 37% as a team, but Kansas will dominate this one. We move on to number 8, Arkansas, number 9, Illinois. Who do we like in this one? Personally, I like Illinois. I think they do a lot of things well. They have a good interior defense that kind of gets overlooked. I think their defensive reputation is poor, but I think they could match up with that big lineup that Arkansas has. They space on offense. They're one of the more efficient shooting teams in the country, they're one of the more efficient teams in the country in transition, I should say, which, by the way, this will be an absolute track meet. Both teams are top 50 in the country in tempo. It'll kind of be a struggle probably from behind the three-point arc, as both teams are sub 300 ranked in three-point shooting, but it'll be a fun, interesting matchup. I think, like I said, there'll be a lot of running, and I'm going to take Illinois in this one.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I just think that Arkansas has been a little bit too inconsistent for my liking here. Not that Illinois has been particularly consistent, but really, I just like the experience that the Illini bring over the Razorbacks here, whether it's Terrence Shannon or Matthew Meyer or even Coleman Hawkins. I think they just have a little bit more of what it takes in March.
Yeah, I mean, just that Arkansas team changed so much when they lost Brazil, and golly, it's just completely different. Even with Nick Smith coming finally onto the team and being active, and that whole just really confused how they had it going on, and I feel like it just made it worse. And so overall, it's been a big drop off with losing him, and so man, it's just gonna be a fast game. So this is really I think the hardest matchup of all of them, and so I'm going to go the opposite and actually go with Arkansas here, just because they do have a lot of talent there, and if they can stay out of foul trouble and potentially not miss their 3-pointers, it could be a different game, but we'll see how that goes.
And I personally am of the opinion that neither the 8 Arkansas nor the 9 Illinois will pose much of a threat to number 1 Kansas. Do you guys disagree there?
Probably not. I mean, it's just because Kansas, it has really come together well. I mean, you saw how they did against even Texas in the last game. They were solid. They just needed their coaching to kind of help them get above that. And I think with Self being finally out of the hospital, he should be good to go and not too worried about that team coming together and getting ready for March, doing it all.
Yeah, I tend to agree here. The only thing that I would say is, weirdly, Kansas's interior defense isn't their strength this year, but neither Arkansas nor Illinois poses a huge threat down in the center line, I believe, offensively, really. So I like Kansas to advance there.
All right, we move on to the 5 against the 12. We talked about Arkansas, Illinois being a track meet. I think this St. Mary's VCU will be quite the opposite, a defensive slugfest. Ben and I like that as UVA fans, but hey, we'll start with you. We'll start with Ben on this one. So St. Mary's or VCU, who do you like?
This is my first upset of the region. I like VCU in this situation. I just think they are on a tear recently. They've been super successful, and I like their guard play as well, whether that's Ace Baldwin or Zeb Jackson, and they have an interior presence in Brandon Johns. That's a power conference player that they brought over from Michigan. I just think that they have a little bit more to handle. St. Mary's, that is, has a little bit more to handle when they're playing the Rams. So I really think they're going to get to the foul line a lot, VCU is, and ultimately make that 5-12 upset.
Yeah, I mean, I completely see that just because the Rams really did get hot there towards the end. It's kind of what punched their ticket. So that's pretty impressive. And I think after losing to Gonzaga, that's just a tough loss anyway for St. Mary's. And so, man, I could see the upset happening, but it really just depends on oh my gosh. No, why can't I think of his name now? Aiden.
Aiden Mahaney. Yeah.
Thank you. I was like, I want to say Malone. I'm like, that's not the right name. I don't know where that's coming from, but yeah. So I think Mahaney's it will really come down to him and how he handles the ball, because that will be what is the difference maker there.
And for that reason, that's actually why I'm going with VCU. I think Mahaney he's a very good, talented player. He's also dropped off a little bit in the last 5-7 games. In that mix is 2 losses to Gonzaga, and I believe a loss to, what was it, Loyola Marymount?
Yeah.
They lost. Yeah. So St. Mary's is definitely trending downward. I think they are bottom 15 in what Haslametrics uses, this thing called momentum, which compares your most recent games to your overall slate. And St. Mary's is bottom 15 in the country in that. So they are trending down. VCU is trending up. I think Ace Baldwin, he's a pest defensively, and he's going to really bother the ball handlers for St. Mary's. So I'm going to go with VCU as well. And then the winner of that game will match up with 4-seeded UConn against 13-seeded Iona. This one is fascinating because it's one of those instances. I was talking about this with Matt on the Spaces. It's like you really like a certain mid-major as an upset watch, but you can't necessarily slate them in as an upset until you see the high seed that they're playing. And UConn just makes it all that more difficult. I'm not sure. I'm going to throw it to you, Jason, and then Ben, I'll throw it to you after, because I want to see if you guys could convince me either way here.
Yeah, I mean, it's just UConn has been playing so well. I mean, they're such a good team. They're so well-rounded. They have all the athletic players that you really want in the Big East. And so I just think that it's going to be too much for Iona to even kind of match. Just the talent discrepancy there is going to be a big issue for Iona. And, you know, I do understand that you can miss threes and it be an issue and it's be a low-scoring game and really be in Iona's favor. But if that doesn't happen, UConn's going to run away with this.
Yeah, unfortunately, I agree. I really liked Iona as a potential upset pick until they were paired with UConn, right? You can't ever count out Pitino as a coach, but I just don't see how Iona's size in particular is going to match up with this power conference level lineup that UConn has, which really would scare 90% of the teams if you're looking at their starting lineup plus their 3 bench players. So I'm going to take UConn. I might be happy about it. I think there's going to be a close game, actually. I think it's going to be one of the closer games UConn plays in the tournament, but they're going to pull away at the end, in my opinion.
Yeah, and as a UVA fan, I was horrified to draw Iona. I'm glad that we didn't, because I think their length defensively is difficult. They might not have like the strength size, but they have a lot of length. And I agree that it's going to be close, but UConn, for the problems that they had in that tough stretch they had in January, they have kind of fixed it. Jordan Hawkins has been very good. Their 3-point shooting has been better. I'm going to go with UConn as well. And then next up, moving towards the bottom of that region that you have on the right of your screen, we have TCU against the winner of the play-in, Arizona State and Nevada. I honestly do not like either of these 11 seeds very much. Not that I'm in love with TCU, but I think TCU is definitely more well-rounded. I like Mike Miles Jr. They're also a deep team that definitely helps around this time of year. So just Nevada, they've fallen off a cliff. I'm surprised they even made the tournament after losing to, what was it, San Jose State in the Mountain West quarterfinals.
Yep.
And then Arizona State's 11-9 and not so great Pac-12. So by default, I'll take TCU.
Yeah, I agree. It has to be TCU here. I mean, like you said, both of these teams have really struggled when it mattered. I mean, when it comes down to it, it's March, and when you start losing this late, it is really concerning because it means that a lot of teams have figured it out, and just all you have to do is watch tape, and you're going to see that TCU is just a superior team when it comes to matching up, particularly with either of the 11 seeds here.
I actually disagree slightly. I'm going to go to bat for Arizona State here. I think they have turned it on when they needed to. Now they did win with a 60-foot buzzer beater, right, to beat Arizona, but they still beat Arizona. They beat USC. It's not like they're coming off a terrible loss. They pulled away. The Wildcats pulled away from them in the Pac-12 tournament, but they still have the talent, I think, to match up with TCU. If TCU can't score inside, I mean, Eddie Lampkin still isn't. We don't think Eddie Lampkin's playing in the tournament, right? So I would worry slightly about that with TCU not being at full strength. I could see Arizona State pulling off an upset here, but TCU is still my pick.
Okay. Fair enough. And then we move on to, I think it's going to be Gonzaga with a pretty good path to the Sweet 16. They're playing Grand Canyon in the first round.
Yeah, Grand Canyon is rough. I mean, they do have a lot of talent, though. I mean, it's a different type. They needed a better draw than Gonzaga because Gonzaga's just going to tear them apart. They have way too many veterans, and just Timmy's a beast, which is going to wreck them completely. But Grand Canyon does have some players that are pretty impressive.
What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, Gonzaga, Grand Canyon's not good enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Gonzaga's been Torvik's top team since February 1st, which I'll talk about a little bit in a couple of minutes. But let's move on to that last little pairing. So we got Northwestern and Boise State. So the 7 and the 10. Again, is the West maybe the weakest region? Because I don't like either of these teams either. I'll take Northwestern. I think Northwestern pulls it out. I think they could match up with Boise State's offensive game plan. They run a lot of pick and roll, a lot of post ups. Tyson Dagenhart. Yeah, Tyson Dagenhart. I'm not sure if I have the name pronounced right, but he's Boise State's basically where they run their offense through. And I love Chase Audige, who is all Big Ten defensive team for a reason. Boo Booey, great player. So I'm taking Northwestern.
You think the West is the weakest region? I think the West is the strongest region.
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the top 4 seeds, like Kansas had an argument to be the number 1 overall seed. The metrics love UCLA. Gonzaga, you mentioned, has been the number 1 team in Torvik since February 1st. And then UConn, I think, is a dark horse pick to win the whole thing.
All right. Let me amend that statement. Maybe the weakest of like the complementary teams, like the 6 through 16.
Maybe, but even Arkansas, Illinois, I think is the best 8-9 matchup.
Okay.
I do agree with you that this isn't a very good game. I'm going to take Boise State, I guess. I don't love microwave scorers, and Northwestern has 2 of them in Boo Booey and Chase Audige, so I'll take the Broncos, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I prefer the Broncos here just because of the fact that they have 4 players that average double digits, and having that many weapons kind of spread it out against a very good Northwestern team and the defense, because, the Mountain West really has a focus on defense as well. And so, yeah, I have to go with the Broncos here.
Okay. And then we got our final matchup. We got UCLA and UNC Asheville. Now, yes, I really like UCLA. I was pretty much committed to them being my championship pick, which now I don't even know who I'm going to pick as my champion yet. I'll have to really break down the matchups. But I was committed to that until Jaylen Clark got hurt, who is best defender, one of their best scorers. I still really like them, and I just don't think there's a lot of upset potential in the first 2 rounds with them, just because look at their losses this year. 2 times to Arizona, Illinois, Baylor, I think USC is in there, but not bad losses. They're not a team that's going to struggle with bad teams. They're a team that might not beat the best teams every time, but they handle business.
Yeah, I agree. I'm locking UCLA at least into the Sweet 16.
Yeah, that's kind of where just the fact that they lost Clark really does hurt them. But I'm nervous at the 32, but I do think they make it through and will likely face Gonzaga at the Sweet 16 spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that, by the way, rematch. A couple tournaments ago, I was talking about that with Matt as well, and I cannot wait. I hope those two match up. But we have our first round matchups predicted. So let's talk about who we think makes it out of there. Personally, I think it's Gonzaga over Kansas. I am committed, first off, to Gonzaga because of just how hot they are. I think Kansas is a good enough team to make it out of that top half because I think the bottom half is a little bit stronger than the top half. But Kansas just might not have the same guard play that they had last year. Last year they had those Ochai Agbajis, the Christian Brauns, the Remy Martins. I think DeJuan Harris is really the only one, the key guard from that team that's back. And, they have Jalen Wilson, who's incredible, but I'm not sure they have the same backcourt as last year. Meanwhile, Gonzaga has just figured it out. Their defense, like I said, while it was shaky in the beginning of the year, is a lot more competent. Their offensive pieces speak for themselves. So I think Gonzaga is going to go to the Final Four. By the way, they get a very, very unfair reputation for not winning in March. No, they have not won their championship, but they've made it to 2 championships in the last decade. They don't get upset. Like they make it to the Sweet 16 pretty much every time. So, yeah.
Yeah, so for me, I'm gonna take UConn over UCLA. I think you have an argument for any of the top 4 seeds to go to the Final Four in this bracket. I think UConn Kansas is a Final Four level matchup in the Sweet 16. To be honest, I think Kansas kind of got hosed in this bracket. To be fair to them, but I like UConn over there. I just think the momentum is there, even with the loss to Marquette. And then for Gonzaga UCLA, I think that Gonzaga just really hasn't seen the perimeter talent that UCLA has, even without Jaylen Clark. I think Tiger Campbell, is going to eat up Gonzaga's guards, particularly on the defensive end. And Jaime Hawkins is just going to go to work, in my opinion. So I like UCLA there, but then they're going to run out of steam, and UConn's going to the Final Four.
Golly, man, that's kind of stole my pick there because I think if UConn gets up against Kansas, that's going to be a really fun game. I probably agree that they're going to move on. It's going to end up being them against UCLA, and it's just so tough to without Jaylen Clark there to really help propel that team. Man, it's so frustrating. But even UConn has its ups and downs, but they're just so good defensively that it really will give UCLA some issues since they don't have him to help so massively. He really was a game changer for the Bruins.
My one worry about UConn, and it's kind of like a game theory thing if you're trying to get the most points possible in a bracket challenge, they have the toughest first-round matchup of the teams that we mentioned. So there's that possibility that they get upset early. I don't want to risk them being a Final Four team for me.
That's fair. I get that. But I'm going to roll with who I think is best, and I think UConn is the one to go.
Okay, well, fair enough. Well, that will do it for our West Region preview. We have 3 more previews coming out in the next 2 days, so keep an eye out for that. But that will do it for today's edition of the CBB Review Studio podcast. Thanks for watching and listening, and take care.